Hey everyone, this is Audrey from the Vile Gathering. Hope everyone is doing well. Today I'm coming to talk about planeswalkers. So, what are planeswalkers? Um, Planeswalkers are some of the most powerful and recognizable cards in Magic the Gathering history. They function differently from other types of cards in Magic, but essentially they serve as an additional player in the game. If you're new to Magic and you're still trying to understand the Planeswalker card type, then I'm here to help today. Um, so Planeswalkers are character cards with abilities that can assist you in the game. Okay. Instead of starting with a life total like a player would, they actually come with what's called a starting loyalty counter. So you can see the loyalty in the text box. If you look at the card that I put on the side of this video, um, you can see that at the right corner of the card, there's a number. So that would be the starting loyalty counter. Um, Loyalty is a type of counter in Magic, and it functions a little bit like a player's life total or a creature's toughness. So planeswalkers can actually gain or lose loyalty counters throughout the game. And when their loyalty is reduced to zero, well, obviously the planeswalker will die and go back to the owner's graveyard. Okay. So there's a few ways that they can actually gain or lose loyalty. First of all, there's the abilities. Okay, so you can add and remove loyalty counters from planeswalkers by activating the loyalty abilities that are listed on the card. So sometimes it's +1, +2, it could be minus, and it'll give a certain ability. Okay, so you can activate one loyalty ability per planeswalker per turn anytime you could cast a sorcery, including during a turn you resolve maybe a planeswalker card. So if you have several planeswalkers in play, you can activate one ability on each. Okay. Most planeswalkers will have about 3 loyalty abilities, but some have as few as 2 and some have as many as 4. So you may have some options on each turn. So it's important to see what is working out for you that turn. The other way to lose ability is by damage. Okay, so planeswalkers take damage, just like creatures and players do. They do lose loyalty equal to the amount of the damage that they take. So damage can be dealt to planeswalkers in 2 ways. First way is by attacking with creatures. So a player can choose to attack a planeswalker with a creature instead of attacking another player. The defending player can prevent damage by either blocking with creatures or countering the spell. The same that they'd prevent attacking creatures from dealing damage to them by blocking the attack of their creatures or by using an instant speed spell to remove the attacking creatures. Okay? Any unblocked damage to the planeswalker will go directly to its life or loyalty counter, as we said before. Another way to deal damage to a planeswalker is spells that deal damage. So some spells that deal direct damage can target planeswalkers also. Okay. There are certain effects that add or remove counters. So loyalty counters can be added or removed just like any other counters in Magic. Okay. So for example, the proliferate ability that can increase the number of counters on a permanence and applies to loyalty counters also. So that's one way to actually increase them or reduce them. There are also static abilities. Okay, so Planeswalkers cards only had loyalty abilities that players could activate one at a time for the first 12 years of their existence. Okay, however, with the release of War of the Spark in 2019, Wizards of the Coast designed Planeswalkers with static abilities, which means static abilities are actually conditions that are always true as long as the card with the ability remains in play. So as long as it remains in your battlefield, you are fine. The ability is static and it'll always trigger. So for example, let's say Narset, Parter of Veils, is on the battlefield. Each opponent of the player who controls Narset can draw more than one card per turn. So if you want to draw more cards, you'll have to find a way to remove Narset from the battlefield. So that is a static condition that controls drawing cards. Okay, so that is one example. Planeswalkers are extremely powerful, but they do have their limitations. Okay, so one of these limitations is known as the legend rule. So the legend rule states that if you control 2 or more copies of a legendary creature or a legendary card with a given name, you have to choose one to keep on the battlefield and sacrifice the rest. Okay? So that means you can't have 2 copies of the same card. However, 2 different Planeswalker cards depicting the same character are totally okay, though. Okay? So you can have, let's say, Gideon, ally of Zendikar, and you can have Gideon of the Trials on your side on the battlefield. Okay? Um, Additionally, you're also allowed to control a Planeswalker card with the same name as a Planeswalker card that your opponent has in play. That has no problem. In fact, it's actually common in many Magic formats to set 2 copies of the same Planeswalker staring down each other. So that can happen, guys. So don't worry about it. So, what makes Planeswalkers good? So, now that we've covered how to play with Planeswalker cards, you're probably eager to actually add them to your decks, okay? And I don't blame you. There are tons of Planeswalker cards out there to choose from. You might actually be asking yourself which ones are the strongest and why. So, here are a few questions you should actually ask yourself when you're evaluating a Planeswalker card. So, does the Planeswalker protect itself? Okay. So, Planeswalker cards have powerful effects. Okay. But they are vulnerable to attacks from creatures. So, therefore, the Planeswalker cards that best protect themselves from attacks tend to be the strongest ones. Planeswalkers can protect themselves in several ways, either by removing opposing creatures, by generating creature tokens that can serve as blockers, or even by having a high starting loyalty that will allow them to survive an attack way longer. So that is one way to actually have a planeswalker on the table more more efficiently. So, how useful are the planeswalker abilities in the context? So, depending on what kind of deck you have to see how the planeswalker's abilities will actually help you throughout the game. But some are more helpful than others. Okay, so consider how strong your planeswalker card is against the decks that you expect to play it against, as well as how useful it'll be if only you get to use one of its abilities before it's removed. All right, so it needs to be really something that'll have an impact during the game. Does the Planewalker suit your game plan? So, once again, many Planeswalkers have generally powerful abilities, others are much more niche. So, if you have your sights on a Planeswalker card with a relatively narrow ability set, you'll want to build a deck that can adequately support it and protect it. Okay, so that'll be important. Now, on the other hand, when you're dealing with planeswalkers, okay, so maybe you haven't managed to get your hands on a planeswalker and put it in your deck yet, but maybe you regularly face them in your play group. So when you're just starting out, you may feel a little bit unprepared to deal with opponents' strongest cards, and planeswalkers tend to require very specific answers to what they will do. The good news is that players of every play, every experience, or every style have the tools to deal with planeswalkers. So here are 4 strategies that I suggest. Okay. First of all, attack them. When you see a planeswalker on the table, attack it. Remember, planeswalkers will lose all their loyalty if they take enough damage from creatures. So if you're enjoying playing an aggressive creature deck, this is probably the best strategy for you. So it can be tough to decide when it's best to attack a planeswalker and when to attack the controller instead. But seriously, if you can attack the planeswalker and get rid of it quickly, do it. Use a removal. Okay, so many removal spells will target planeswalkers. Okay, not just the direct damage spells we mentioned earlier, but some instant speed spells. There's a lot of destroy creatures or planeswalkers. Any removal spell that can target any permanent or a planeswalker as well will help. Okay, then there's counter spells. So in some situations, it can be futile to use a removal spell on a planeswalker after your opponent has already benefited from its abilities. Okay, so fortunately, you can actually prevent planeswalkers from entering the battlefield with a counter spell. So that can be interesting also. And you can also ignore them. Ignoring your opponent's strongest card might be unintuitive to you, and in many cases, it might actually be a wrong move. But sometimes you'll be rewarded for focusing on reducing your opponent's life total or milling their whole library instead. So Your opponent can't activate their planeswalkers if they've already lost the game. So it's really depending on the situation, depending on the gameplay. So sometimes you're better to attack them. Sometimes you're better to remove them. Sometimes you can just counter them. And if not, you ignore them and you just hit direct damage into the opponent directly. So I hope this was useful to you guys today. And stay tuned. I will be back with other videos for you guys. Have a nice day.